Result. Lary Sorensen, who pitched in the All-Star game and pitched for 7 major league teams, was the voice of the Tigers, who lives and works now in Grand Rapids, and he was watching yesterday, and he's on the other end of our line. Good morning.
Michael Patrick, good morning to you.
The whole All-Star game, I thought, was maybe not overshadowed, but certainly the story of the day was that...
shadows is the key word.
Why do you say that?
Well, because playing with that early start out in California was awfully tough on the hitters early in the game, tough on the fielders late in the game. So shadows played a very important part in that ball game yesterday. I think that's part of the reason it was such a low-scoring game. Plus, there were some pretty darn good pitchers.
Oh.
And I didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought. Sorry about that.
No, I know that you're sweet on the pitchers because you were one, and so it's a special interest to you. But yeah, I guess it was starting at around 5:30 Pacific time would be an unusual time for that stadium to start a game. They would either start earlier in the afternoon or later when you're playing on the West Coast, right?
Right, and the good news is, though, is that the people on the East Coast didn't have to wait up till 1 o'clock to see the end of the ball game.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll start doing that with some of the playoff games as well and World Series games, because it just gets too late. You lose a lot of your fan base when you run it after midnight.
I sure hope so, but it kind of works the other way against the West Coast, though. If the World Series or the playoffs are in the East Coast, then they want to make them as late as possible so that the West Coast can be in on the act, right?
Well, it's a catch-22, much as the game was last night, as far as what they could do trying to get people in and yet still try to win the game.
Yeah, I would appreciate it. I noticed the Red Wings, too, have backed up their starts this year. They're going to start at 7:05 instead of 7:35, and everybody appreciates that for what it's worth. But it did go late last night. It was an exciting game. But the overshadow, too, that I was talking about was the fact that George Steinbrenner had passed away earlier in the day. There was a tribute to him at the All-Star game and a video and that sort of thing. And I just wonder, since you made your way around the bigs as much as you did you ever run across George Steinbrenner?
Well, I certainly did during the course of the 10 years that I played in the major leagues. I almost got traded to the Yankees one time for Jerry Mumphrey, an outfielder, and that would have been an interesting situation. But, George certainly was one of the people that changed the game of baseball. He changed the approach that owners took to it. Free agency, obviously, was a big part of what he did to bring it into prominence in baseball. One thing you could always say about him is the only thing on his mind was trying to win a championship for the New York Yankees. And it was interesting listening to some of the old quotes where he said, no, I'll be a hands-off owner and I'll let the baseball people run things. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way. The one story that I remember, Michael Patrick, and this happened actually with Mark, at Tiger Stadium, they were doing a coat drive for Cots, I believe it was, in Detroit. And Mark had his little uniform on and was standing with some of the wives outside collecting coats and things. And Mr. Steinbrenner came by, and he said, what are you collecting for? And they explained to him what it was, and he says, well, I don't have a coat with me. And he reached in and gave him a $100 bill.
Oh,
so
nice.
He was a very generous man. He, contributed off the field in so many different ways you couldn't even begin to explain them. But he had a big heart, and he loved the game of baseball.
Yeah, we did actually reach Mike Ilitch yesterday afternoon, and he said he preferred to speak through a statement that he and Marion gave, and they talked about the fact that George was very committed to winning, that he that was his thing. And the people that I hear from New York who played for him say, you always knew where you stood with him. Winning was the number one most important thing, and he created a constant sense of urgency for that. He did not like to wait to win, did he?
Well, he wasn't easy. There was no question about that. He kept the hammer down on the people that worked for him. I saw one of his early interviews on television last night, and he said, there are two things that I need to do. He said, I need to breathe and I need to win. And in that order. So,
and by the way,
kind of put his priorities in place.
I know that you went to the University of Michigan. I was over there yesterday. They're going to open up the new football stadium today, by the way. It's open right now for people who want to go have a peek. That building, and it's a building now, that stadium, has changed the Ann Arbor skyline. Those two press boxes that they built and luxury suites are gigantic and ominous, if I can say so.
Yes, they are. We happened to be over there a couple weekends ago and played a baseball tournament on the baseball field in Ann Arbor at Michigan. And from every place around, you can see it, like you said. So it truly is the big house now, and it's going to change the approach. Hopefully it'll keep the sound in a little bit more, and they can turn it to their advantage and use it against some teams as well and make it a little bit more of a home field advantage.
That's a great comment. Lary Sorensen in Grand Rapids, Michael Patrick Shields.